This video will contain spoilers from the off, so remember, you've been warned. Season 2, Episode 4 of The Bear was an episode of a show like no other. It was crafted in the most thought-provoking and delicate way, and it really allowed us to step aside from the chaos that we saw unfolding in the first 3 episodes and get time with a character that we didn't often get to see that much of, Marcus. The conversation with Luca, the development of the character, the use of the desserts, and the soundtrack, they were all things that contributed to the DNA behind this episode and the reason as to why it was a success. So let's jump into the video and discuss why The Bear Season 2 Episode 4 is a masterpiece. The meaning of the episode. One thing that I really loved about this episode was the meaning behind it and the importance that it had on Marcus moving forward. This was an episode that had lots of subtleties that really showed that going on this trip to Denmark was something that Marcus needed. The episode started off with pure chaos. Building work was being done in the restaurant, and with every bang there was a cut to a different shot of a note with something that needed to be done in order to progress the refurbishment. Pure chaos. Something we were used to by this point, as the previous episodes all contained this. We hadn't had a moment to breathe, and neither had Marcus, so it lured us into a false sense of security by making us think that we were going to have another episode like what we had previously had. But no, we had a much softer, calmer episode, where there was no chaos present whatsoever. Immediately after the banging and the building work, it cut to a scene with Marcus with his mother in hospital, which showed us that not only was Marcus battling with the chaos that was going on with the refurbishment of the restaurant, but he was also struggling because his mother was in a critical condition, and it could get worse at any given moment, showing us that he genuinely didn't have a moment to breathe or to be with himself without worry. Hence why this trip to Denmark was exactly what he needed. Marcus was new to the game and had only been a chef for around a year and a half, and by him going out there and spending a week working with Luca, he was able to amplify his abilities and seek the inspiration that he needed in order to bring it back to the States. Marcus was spending his life living for other people and not allowing himself a chance to step back and to take care of himself. And it was perfectly summed up with the call that he had with Sydney when she said, "How can you expect to take care of somebody if you're not taking care of yourself?" A line that really hit home for him. And I think something else that supported that was when he saved the person that had gotten injured when he fell off of his bike. The person that he saved got up and gave him a hug, and it was a moment where you could really tell that Marcus needed that hug. He needed somebody to comfort him and to make him feel okay, as it seemed like something that he didn't often get. This was supported by the fact that he didn't want to let go, and he closed his eyes whilst in the embrace, showing that it really did mean something to him, to have somebody just wrapping their arms around him. There was a song that I thought was particularly poignant in this episode. It contained the lyrics, "You are tired and you want to be freed." Something which I felt was symbolic of how Marcus felt about the tie that he had in needing to be there for his mother, and the worry that he constantly had on his mind 24 hours a day, almost like he's trapped. But then there was another line in the song, which was, "I've been loving you, and I don't want to stop now," which I feel was symbolic of the fact that no matter how much worry is within his mind, he doesn't want his mother to go, and he doesn't want to ever stop loving her, nor will he. But he knows that she's not got that long left. I thought it was a beautiful song to have featured, but it was painfully sad at the same time, as there was no happy ending that was present in either of those lines. As when Marcus is eventually free of the worry of how his mother is, he will be in deep pain because she'll be gone, because the love that he has for her is endless. This episode was about Marcus's development and showing him that he wasn't too late to the game, that he could use everything that has happened to him in his life to inspire his cooking, as was confirmed when Luca said how being out in the world is far better than being stuck in a kitchen when it comes to the inspiration behind the best tasting food. And that the line that he said at the start to his mother, "I'm worried that I'll mess up," was no longer a fear that was within his mind, as by the end, he was a transformed individual that was confident and didn't second guess himself, like what Luca said to him when he was making that first dessert. The use of the desserts to show progression. One thing that I thought was particularly interesting in this episode were the different desserts that were featured, and how they ultimately tied together in the end to make the main dessert that Marcus was creating. We saw him struggling to start with when it came to the initial pudding, but the final thing that we saw in the entirety of the episode was Marcus creating his own dessert with nobody else in the kitchen, as he then took a bite and was proud of it. The final dessert that he created was a combination and a concoction of most of the different things that he learned when he was in the kitchen. I have no idea what any of these ingredients are, so apologies in advance for the extremely poor description, but it had the small balls from the first dessert, the pineapple type ring from the photo he sent to his mother, the orange gelatine from the third dessert, and the green ice cream from that dessert too, showing that every single thing that he utilized on that final dessert was something that he learned from his time in Denmark, allowing him to have that spark of inspiration that he needed to create something truly unique, with true meaning behind it for the first time. The same could also be said for when he first customized the dessert that he was learning in the beginning. Luca mentioned how going outside was the best source of inspiration, and can often lead to the best tasting dishes, and shortly afterwards we saw Marcus adding his own twist on the original dessert with something that he found, showing that he was taking on board what was said. One of my favourite things that I feel was quite unnoticed in this episode, and could have even been unnoticed by Luca, was the fact that after taking that advice, Marcus went out and bought some pastries to consume, and whilst he was eating them, he noticed that the pastry was most likely rolled in the technique. And then, when both himself and Luca were in the room together, Marcus was rolling the pastry, showing that he was trying the technique that he thought was best. The progression and development of Marcus through the use of the desserts that he was creating was a great way of subtly and visually showing us that the character was changing, and changing for the better. Luca and Marcus's connection. One of the best moments in this episode was easily the conversation that we saw taking place between Luca and Marcus when they were working with the dough. We heard all about Marcus's life, how he got into working for Mikey, and the pain that he had within him. And as well as that, we also heard all about Luca and how he became the renowned chef that was extremely successful. We heard how Luca once thought that he was the best chef that there could be, but then he met another chef who was actually better. The chef was never named, but it was heavily implied that it was Carmy, and judging by the photo later on in episode 7, I think that it most certainly was. He mentioned how staying by his side made him get to the level and standard that he was in the present day, and that he helped him massively. And I feel this was a moment that showed us that Carmy is going to be doing the exact same for Marcus. Luca had discipline within him in order to be the best version of himself, and I feel an element of that was embedded within Marcus in this episode, not only in the kitchen, but also in filling up the water bowl for the imaginary cat, sweeping the floor and watering the flowers every single day. Marcus was being molded from the moment that he got on that boat, and the connection that he had with Luca was something that elevated that and made for a chemistry on screen that I didn't expect to be so perfect. This was a beautiful episode in the show. It was one that was weirdly emotional at the end when Marcus had a smile on his face as it cut to black and the credits started rolling with an extremely emotive score being played in the background. I felt like we saw a side to a character that we'd never really seen before, and it was so beautifully executed. It's up there with episode 6 and episode 7 of season 2 in being one of a kind. Every second counts, and my god, it definitely did with this show. Every second of this episode was a masterpiece. So, there you have it, why The Bear Season 2 Episode 4 is a masterpiece. If you want to see more videos such as endings explained, theories and predictions, and character breakdowns, then click on the I button, or alternatively you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. If you'd like to give me a show or movie that you'd like me to review, then head over to my Twitter, @brainpilot_, and tweet me what show or movie you'd like me to review next. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the latest movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What did you think of this episode? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.